時代革命 Resist the CCP! Okay, now we are going to have our first speaker, the advisor to the World Uyghur Congress and the CEO of Hong Kong Watch, Benedict Rogers.
Voice I. Gong Fuk Hong Kong. I stand here tonight wearing this t-shirt that says "Fight for Freedom, Stand with Hong Kong," in solidarity with the people of Hong Kong. And I put on my Uyghur dopa in solidarity with the Uyghur people. And I carry the people of Tibet in my heart, and if my Tibetan friends give me something Tibetan to wear, then I will wear that with pride as well. I'm here tonight on behalf of Hong Kong Watch as an advisor to the World Uyghur Congress and the Stop Uyghur Genocide campaign, but also on behalf of Christian Solidarity Worldwide, and as a friend of the Tibetans, and as a friend, while we rightly are speaking for Hong Kong and the Uyghurs in Tibet, because these are the three areas of the most egregious CCP repression currently. I speak here also as a friend of and in solidarity with everyone who is facing repression and persecution under the CCP. Christians across China are facing the worst crackdown since the Cultural Revolution. Falun Gong practitioners continue to be persecuted. People are targeted for their human organs. Lawyers and citizen journalists and bloggers and whistleblowers are in prison, and civil society activists have had their space for activism almost completely disappeared. So I stand here in solidarity with everyone who is persecuted by the CCP. Today, 72 years ago, the so-called People's Republic of China was declared. A People's Republic where the people are tortured and disappeared and jailed and persecuted. And so today, whilst the CCP may want this to be a day of celebration, it is certainly no celebration. Today is a day of mourning, and also a day of protest and renewed determination to fight for freedom. When we look back over the last 7 decades of CCP rule in China, it is clear that if you look at the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution, the 1989 Tiananmen Massacre, forced organ harvesting, the genocide of the Uyghurs, the repression in Tibet, the CCP over the last 72 years has killed more people than Stalin or Hitler or many of the other most murderous dictators in the world. And if you add to that the other injustices I've mentioned, the persecution of Christians, the persecution of Falun Gong, the persecution of civil society activists and lawyers and journalists and whistleblowers, and the dismantling of freedom in Hong Kong in total violation of an international agreement and of international norms. This is a regime that is one of the world's most criminal, most brutal, most inhumane, most repressive, most mendacious regimes of all. And so we need to use today, and it's so inspiring to see so many people coming together, Hong Kongers, Uyghurs, Tibetans, and friends of all of you, standing together to say with one voice, enough is enough. It is time now for the free world, for our governments of democracies around the world, to stand up to the CCP, to take action, to hold them to account, to sanction them, to stop trading with them, to stop kowtowing to them, and to do everything possible to end these 72 years of bloody repression. So we must call on our governments to act urgently. and not only to defend and fight for the rights of all the peoples that the CCP is persecuting, but increasingly to defend our own freedoms as well, because the CCP is not only the repressor of the peoples within its own borders, it's increasingly aggressive to freedom itself. So I stand with you, and I end with this message. 72 years ago on this day, Chairman Mao Zedong allegedly said the words, "The Chinese people have stood up." Today it is our responsibility to stand up for the peoples living under CCP repression, especially the Uyghurs, the Tibetans and Hong Kongers, but everybody else that I've mentioned as well. We must stand up for them, we must fight for their freedom, and we must never give up until we achieve that. And the peoples throughout China and throughout the countries that China has invaded and occupied, East Turkestan, Tibet, the city of Hong Kong that it is destroying in violation of an international agreement. We must continue that fight until all of those peoples are free. Guang Fuk Hong Gong, Ga Yao. And if I could say the equivalent in Tibetan and Uyghur, I would, and in preparation for next year, I'll try to learn to. Thank you.
呢度有幾百甚至乎上千人係出席咗一個集會。呢一個其實只係我哋第一 part 嘅集會，我哋陣間係會係去中國大使館啦，我哋會係經一個 Regent Street 同埋 Piccadilly Circus 呢一個最繁忙嘅地點係去遊行嘅。點解？其實今日對我嚟講，呢一個集會嘅主題其實係民族。對我嚟講，香港係一個民族，維吾爾係一個民族，西藏人亦都係一個民族。有好多人話點解你會係咁可能會搞唔同嘅集會啊，或者係唔同類型嘅活動咧？對我嚟講，其實個目的其中一個目的就係要建構一個香港民族嘅身份，呢一個係非常之重要嘅一步，亦都只有係成功可以話去建構香港民族，我哋先至能夠去光復香港。對於好多人嚟講，或者我係對喺唔同嘅媒體嚟講咧，我都係會話自己一個測量師咯。但係其實我除咗係做測量師嘅工作，我亦都係做一啲所謂嘅 project management 或者 program management。喺我做嘢嘅時候，其實一個 concept 就係我哋會分唔同嘅 projects、唔同嘅 programs 同埋唔同嘅 portfolio。咩叫 projects？ 咩叫 program？ 咩叫 portfolio 咧？其實就即係portfolio 係由唔同嘅 program 去組成，而 program 亦都係由唔同嘅 project 去組成。而對於我哋香港人嚟講，我哋嘅 portfolio 就係光復香港，而建構一個民族、香港民族嘅身份、香港民族嘅認同就係其中一個 program。而今日呢一個集會同埋以至係唔同香港人嘅努力，就係唔同嘅細小嘅 project。所以今日其實我哋蹣跚前行緊，我哋係盡力去慢慢係向前行緊，絕對唔係淨係行禮如儀咁簡單。所以我亦都好希望大家喺海外嘅大家能夠去繼續去嘗試建構翻我哋屬於自己嘅香港民族身份，呢個係非常之重要嘅一件事。當香港喺在地嘅香港人，喺香港嘅香港人努力緊嘅時候，我哋亦都需要不斷咁去努力落去，念念不忘，必有回響。光復香港，時代革命。光復香港，時代革命。光復香港，時代革命。Free Hong Kong， Free Tibet， Free East Turkestan， 民族自強，民族自強，民族自強。
油槍喺度，係有少少
過嚟過嚟。
Stand with Hong Kong! Stand with Hong Kong! Fight for freedom! China, China, China!
This is really fun. Okay? This is really fun. This is 600 people. There's no police.
Fight for freedom!
Fight for freedom! Declaration. And until the universal basic rights are not restored in Hong Kong. Thank you. For the people of Taiwan, for the people of Taiwan, there is nothing to celebrate when the democratic country faces the imminent threat of military invasion from the Chinese regime. There is nothing to celebrate so long as the southern Mongolians cannot maintain their own language and Buddhist culture. Certainly, there is nothing to celebrate so long as the Falun Gong followers as well as other religious and faith communities cannot practice the devotions. And the list goes on. The lack of democracy, freedom of speech. So, friends, we gather here today in front of this Chinese embassy in London to mark this day as the Black Day for all the victims of the Chinese Communist regime. So let's send our unified message to the Chinese regime in Beijing through our attendance in front of the embassy in London on the PRC National Day. Resistance against the CCP regime is growing within China and around the world. Friends, today's protests and the rallies are jointly organized by the Atlas Movement, Free Tibet, Hong Kong 8, Hong Kong Liberty, Power to Hong Kongers, Tibetan Community in Britain, Uyghur Community UK, World Uyghur Congress, Stop Uyghur Genocide, and Global Alliance for Tibet and Persecuted Minorities.
各位香港人，大家好，我係香港詩人嘅巴嫂。今日行街示威嘅主題係 Resist CCP Day， 團結對抗中共日。團結對抗中共日當中包含咗兩重嘅意思。 第一係團結，但係我哋今日希望提出嘅團結並唔係講緊各國需要團結反抗中共極權擴張啊，所以我哋需要積極游說乜嗰種團結，而係講緊俾在座各位大家聽嘅就係、所有被打壓嘅群體都需要團結起嚟去爭取我哋被剝削緊嘅嘢，我哋各自嘅身份，我哋應有嘅自由、人權，以至係我哋渴望嘅政治體制。所以喺呢場抗中共運動入面，我哋聯同藏族、維族、台灣人，即使係被打壓緊嘅中國人，其實都屬於同一個陣線嘅，因為我哋都爭取緊同樣嘅價值。老實講，對抗中共並唔係單一個群體嘅事，亦都唔係單一個群體就能夠做到嘅事，而係只有每一個被中共打壓緊嘅群體都一齊好似今日咁樣行出嚟，講出我哋嘅訴求，去到對抗中共，我哋先至會爭取到我哋所嚮往嘅價值。而承托住呢一個我哋需要團結嘅信念嘅，就係今日活動我哋想帶出嘅第二重意思：充權 （empowerment）。雖然而家全球各國對於對抗中共呢一樣嘢都越嚟越多聲音，但係歸根究底，我哋呢一眾前線被打壓嘅群體先至係最需要企出嚟，因為我哋先至最清楚我哋需要啲乜嘢，我哋想要啲乜嘢，我哋渴望嚮往啲乜嘢。而當我哋認清咗我哋自己嘅訴求之後，我哋係唔可以再將自己嘅權益假手於人，將自己甚至乎係香港嘅現在同埋未來交由一班政客、交由一班說客手上去為我哋作主。我哋想要啲乜嘢，我哋自己行出嚟，積極地、主動地去爭取。而我哋而家更加應該做嘅，可能你會問我哋可以做咩嚟到英國？就係好利用而家越嚟越多香港人嚟到英國啦，去到唔同國家啦，我哋會變成當地嘅公民，我哋嘅公民權利，我哋嘅政治權利嘅時候，我哋參與呢個公民社會，透過自己喺唔同行業嘅政治力量，為自己同埋為香港人發聲，唔好再外判我哋嘅訴求，希望要其他人為我哋去爭取，而係自己親自去製造自己想達到嘅改變。總括嚟講，我一個簡單嘅例子先啦。我哋思源當初就係見證住中共滲入咗英國院校，打壓緊我哋嘅言論同埋學術自由，令到我哋威脅埋我哋嘅人身安全添。我哋先至成立呢個跨院校嘅組織，希望爭取院校去正視呢個問題。我哋甚至乎會喺院校入邊去示威，去叫佢哋正視，要佢哋去懲罰翻騷擾我哋嘅人等等嘅嘢。正正就係呢一個道理，喺對抗中共嘅時候，幫助喺香港嘅人，或者係喺海外為海外香港人爭取福利上面，醫療啊、護理啊、教育啊、就業等等嘅，我哋都好需要㗎。我哋應該積極地去為自己去爭取，唔係依賴某一啲人，唔係依賴某一啲組織去為我哋做。而我相信呢一個諗法，亦都係我哋擺脫呢種無力感，擺脫而家運動越嚟越衰落啦，大家覺得冇嘢可以做到呢個感受嘅最佳方法。總括嚟講，喺爭取自由嘅路上，我哋自己嘅訴求只能夠靠自己去爭取，而唔係寄望有人會為我哋去做。而隨住往往會有其他人同我哋抱一樣嘅訴求，喺呢條路上面，我哋慢慢就會揾到我哋嘅戰友，齊上齊落，並肩作戰。所以喺呢段路程上，我哋並唔會孤單㗎。我哋如果2年前可以200萬人為自己嘅訴求上街，我哋今日就算唔再喺香港，都依然會為自己嘅訴求繼續去爭取。光復香港！光復香港 ！Free Hong Kong!
Free Hong Kong!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free East Turkestan!
Free Turkestan!
Thank you.